Hi, you're here with Steve and Carolyn, Local Live. We are interviewing historian and author Joseph Minardi about his fourth book, upcoming in November, we believe, called City of Neighborhoods, Philadelphia 1890 to 1910.
Mhm.
Joe, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
With this book in particular, you've got over about 200 images that you've
Right.
used to create it, and it documents each neighborhood in the city, correct?
Pretty much, yeah. There may be a few that don't get included, but it's pretty extensive.
So how did you pull these pictures together?
Well, I've been collecting for a long time now, and truthfully,
Wait,
I
wait,
get
wait,
them
hold on. Collecting? Like, where do you collect them from?
eBay mostly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I've been doing this collecting for about 10 years, and I actually got lucky because a large collection was being liquidated by through this dealer from Reading, and it was maybe a couple hundred of old postcards of Philadelphia, and it was a really nice collection. So, he was selling them over the course of about a year, and I can't say that I won every auction. I maybe like one in four or one in five, but it was enough to like really like build my collection. Just exponentially. It went from a few nice ones to like a very large collection. And I've also been able to purchase like other small collections of Philadelphia photographs. So when you put it all together, it pretty much documents the entire city.
And obviously there's some information you have on the cards, but then you also then have to follow up with the research and
Right.
really dig into it, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And what does that entail? Is that a lot of like city archives and
Yeah, I actually spent a lot of time at the Philadelphia City Archives, and I'm sure they got sick of me after a while, but it was nice. I mean, I got to know the staff, and they're really nice people, and they were very cooperative. And what they did for me is they brought out these large boxes that contain the city building permits. And unfortunately, for some strange reason, other than the fact that it's just Philadelphia, these were not actually digitized. So I actually had to go through them individually, one by one.
Hmm.
And that was like a pretty daunting task. So I was there at the archives for, off and on for about a year or so, just going through them. And what I was looking for was the number of residential permits that were being issued, and just like cataloging everyone and getting as much information off the building permit as I could about who the builder was, and obviously the location. And they actually contain some other interesting information, like how much it cost to build them, and one occasion it would even like list who the architect was. So that was a good learning experience right there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you include the price and the architects and all that information?
Occasionally, when I feel it's relevant, or just to add some extra interest to a row of houses.
And we've talked before about in East Falls, I know in particular, there was one or two architects that you had become quite familiar with their style. What were a couple of the ones that you noticed in the East Falls section?
East Falls, a lot of those buildings were built prior to my research period before 1890, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of information in the city archives from that period. The permit collection at the Philadelphia City Archives only goes back to 1889, so there's nothing that exists before that. So that's kind of frustrating if you're a researcher. But a few rows of houses that were built in East Falls actually was in the permit collection, and I have a few nice photos from East Falls. One I think you're very familiar with, that picture of Ainsley Street.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That is a really nice photograph.
Yes.
And I have some actually attained a pretty nice collection from the Wissahickon neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
So I got some nice photos of Wissahickon in there too.
Right.
Oh, great.
And Manayunk. You
And
got some
Manayunk.
really cool ones in Manayunk.
A few good Manayunks too, yes.
Yeah, I love the Manayunk ones. They were neat. And how about Germantown? You got a bunch of Germantown as well, right?
Right. Germantown was a very popular neighborhood. It was good for commuters. It was good for just everyday working people. There were a lot of mills and factories in that neighborhood also. So you had a good mixture of people who like moved there as a suburb in like the mid to late 19th century. And, you had just the everyday people who were just working, trying to make a living. So you had a good mix of upper and lower middle class people and whatnot like that.
Yeah, yeah, and that was really evident to me in the photographs.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed like I said earlier, the social media aspect of it, that there were people in these photos, and like
Yeah.
people would send somebody a postcard with their house marked on it and like an
Right.
X over it, right? Like, what were these postcards for again?
People, I guess, some of them were just like saying, hey, listen, this is my new house. Check it out.
Mhm.
Don't you like it? And they would just mail it to their friends or whoever. And it was really, like you said, it was like pre-social media. It was like a great way of selling your house or telling people about your new house.
Yeah, yeah, and it was
By
like, I
snail
guess,
mail.
yeah,
Was
yeah,
the-
and I think there must have been like a cottage industry. I guess the real estate developers had people who took pictures.
Yeah, I think that was like the bulk of it. I think the real estate developers really saw a good avenue to advertise their new properties, and some of the advertisers would actually put like their logo on it or say these houses for sale for like $5,000.
Hmm.
Get them while they last or whatever.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was a good advertising tool for certain real estate developers.
I'm sure. And especially at that time when so much development was happening, right? It
Yeah.
was a huge boom for Philadelphia. So there
Oh,
must be a lot of
absolutely.
competition.
A lot of competition. Yeah. There you had several builders who were just building like crazy. I guess they couldn't put up houses fast enough. So yeah, it was pretty fierce.
Kind of like now.
You know what? This period now is kind of puts me in mind of what was probably going on over 100 years ago.
Right?
Yeah.
Cycles, everything
It's
comes
crazy.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any surprises as you were digging through this collection and putting it together?
I think one surprise was how much North Philadelphia was considered to be like the preeminent area of the city in the early 19th century, or excuse me, early 20th century. Um, you just had like lots of people flooding that part of the city, and it was a very popular residential section. And then I had like upper North Philadelphia, which is like Albany and Ogontz, and that came later, and that was like more like a suburban type setting. But also West Philadelphia was very popular too.
Mhm.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, do you have any favorite images or favorite pics that you uncovered?
Yeah, I mean, the cover photograph I like a lot. I mean, just the rows of children, and you have a few adults there, and
Yeah.
I think
Shopkeeper.
one of the kids is holding up a dog. I think that's fantastic. And yeah, I like the photographs where you see like the actual life of the city, the
Mhm.
people. They're posing. I'm sure having a photographer take their picture was probably like one of the biggest things that happened to them up to that point. So they would get out in the street and they would stand still for as long as they could, and
Mhm.
you see some of the kids with the roller skates on, and some kids were like just barefoot. It's you just see like the different aspects of city life.
Yeah. And in one of your images, you had someone in a window with a baby looking out the window.
Oh yeah. I think that was like a corner store in West Philadelphia,
Mhm.
and I think I even identified that woman.
Huh?
Yeah,
Oh.
Wow.
yeah.
So that was just as part of your research, you happened to determine who that was?
I actually got a collection of photos. It was about a shopkeeper who lived in West Philadelphia. He moved around from a couple places, but he eventually got his own shop on, I forgot the actual intersection, but it was like around like 30th and Fairmount, I think was the intersection. And he was actually murdered in 1899. So I put that story in there it's in the captions. But he's actually standing in front of a shop, and that's his store.
Mm.
And the woman above in the second story that you were talking about, I think that was his wife, Rosa. So there's like a little bit of a Philadelphia murder mystery in that photograph right
wow.
there. So
There's so much in the
yeah,
book. Like
Yeah.
I was poring over it. I
Yeah.
would. I wish
Oh,
I
good.
had a jeweler's loupe
Yeah.
to just play with that. Oh, there it
Well, there you go. That's a good excuse to get a
is.
jeweler.
Yay!
Yeah, his name was Abraham Yoder.
Cool.
I believe that was his wife. Yeah.
Oh man. Yep. Yep.
So I think that photograph was taken in 1895, and just think, like 4 years later, he was dead.
Wow.
No, that's pretty
Uh,
crazy.
So
That's some great backstory. That's got to be a real rush when you find that. It's just somebody digging around in the file.
Yeah. I mean, I actually I went to like the Philadelphia Inquirer archives to find out, read his obituary.
Yeah.
It's just a sad story. He went from being like a shop working in a different grocery stores to owning his own shop, and then he gets killed like 4 years later.
Was it ever solved?
I
Is
don't
it
think
a
it was ever
cold case?
solved. They never said like the actual cause of death, but I'm pretty sure like he was shot like in a robbery or something like that.
Oh man.
Might have another book lined up there. Cold
Yeah, I know, right?
Philly Files.
Right.
So I'm fascinated by some of the streetwear back in the day. At this cover photo, it looks like they're wearing formal attire to run around in the street, which is another pretty amazing thing in some of these kids.
Yeah, back in the day, people you put on nice clothes when you left the house.
Mhm.
There was no casual Fridays or anything like that. So. Oh yeah, when you see like even the children are like well dressed, you're like, wow, that must have really
Just an odd time.
yeah, just they're definitely a different period. I mean,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, buttons and snaps and all that.
Yeah.
You lace your kid up, he's probably never
The kids
getting
all look like
undone.
Buster Brown.
You
I don't
know?
remember who he is. Yeah, who he was.
The paper collars you see
Yeah, exactly.
on and change. Yeah.
Right,
All those things.
exactly.
Yeah. Oh, so yeah. But so with this, so being your fourth book, how's the process changing for you in the writing of it when you approach these works?
Well, I still do like lots of research, which is that's okay. I mean, I don't mind doing it a bit. This book is different in that I didn't have to actually go out and take the photographs; they were already taken for me, so that was kind of nice.
Ah.
But as far as research goes, I mean, yeah, I spent a lot of time at the city archives, which I got to know pretty well, and I also spent some time at the Historical Society of Pennsylvania, just to get some stories about the immigrant groups that lived in Philadelphia back in those days. So that was pretty good too.
Yeah.
Right.
And this time period, of course, it's mentioned in the story on the cover jacket that it's the time when Philadelphia was booming as a manufacturing center.
Right.
And that's what's driving a lot of this building and a lot of these new homes being snapped up.
Absolutely, yeah. Philadelphia was referred to as the workshop of the world, which is actually true because according to a survey of like manufactured items in the United States, like I think like 90% of them were actually made in Philadelphia. So I mean, Philadelphia made just about everything you could think of.
Wow.
Ships and locomotives and all kinds of fabric, and it was just amazing.
Style.
Things that were made in Philadelphia. The different wool and cotton fabrics. It was just astounding. And it was a good place if you were a person who maybe didn't have high education, maybe somebody who was new to the country, you can probably get a job really right away. It wasn't maybe a great or high paying job, but it was something,
Yeah, sure.
So,
Yeah.
So the city's population grew by 50% during this period. It went from 1 million in 1890 to by 1910 it was at 1.5 million. But when you're adding like 500,000 people in that short period of time, of course there's going to be lots of buildings. So.
And a lot of distinctive buildings, which unfortunately a lot of those are disappearing these days.
Yeah. Well, you know how it goes in Philadelphia. if there's not as much protection for historic structures in Philadelphia as there is in other cities, and that's it's quite a shame.
It is. We're a World Heritage City, but then we crap all over our architecture.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Brag about.
Anything for a buck. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, are you familiar with there's the city zoning changed for historic properties, and now if it's historic, they can just redo it as long as whatever they want to do, as long as they leave the facade, right?
Oh, okay.
Been
Well,
made much easier to, repurpose the inside, I guess is the phrase you'd.
yeah, and that's not really good either, because you look at the interior of some of these places, you're like, why would you want to get rid of it? I mean,
Oh my gosh,
places, the woodwork and
Yep.
just, oh, it's just astounding. So yeah, I don't think that's really a great solution either.
No, Oscar Bussart was talking about
A
tiered.
tiered approach to maintaining historic properties, because obviously, as you know, it's so expensive in some areas to hew to the original building standards and codes and make it, bring it up to date. His proposal, from what we can tell, we're going to interview him, is to have a tiered approach where you can, instead of doing the platinum plans, so to speak, for rebuilding, you might go a step or two down,
Depending on the value of the house and the neighborhood.
Yeah,
they don't have to necessarily pay for all of the,
top of the line.
Right.
Yeah,
Super
I would listen to Oscar, because I think he really knows what he's talking about.
Good. I get that feeling too.
Yeah.
You have to take into consideration, not everybody is financially capable of performing historically accurate restorations to their houses too. So
That's true.
you have to be sensitive to that as well.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you declare it historic, it sounds great, but you could be hurting people who can't afford to upkeep their house, and then you actually wind up hurting the house because it falls apart. A friend of ours in Germany was fascinated when he came here because he saw people using historic buildings, and he said in Germany they're not allowed to touch anything that's historic, so it pretty much all just falls apart.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he was very frustrated by that, and he thought it was wonderful that in the United States at least you can restore. They don't even let them restore, from what he was saying. So
that's pretty strange.
Yeah, but I guess they bombed 90% of their historic buildings were destroyed. So I guess at this point they're like, it looks right. If it looks like it's falling apart, it was meant to look that way.
Right.
I guess. I don't know.
So the other thing is, you go around with, I know that you travel to various areas with your camera. So you see a lot of this firsthand, I would think.
Oh, yes. It's, the neighborhoods don't look quite the same as they do in the photographs, which is kind of a shame. Even the ones that are intact, over time, owners will do whatever they want to their house, and it changes, and a lot of details that the architects put in also were removed for various reasons. Maybe they rotted away and it was too expensive to replace it, so it's just like, oh well, we'll just get rid of it. And also, you have like trees and telephone poles and various things blocking the view, so it's kind of nice to see what they actually were originally intended to look like back in the day.
Oh yeah, it's like they're naked. It's neat to see these row
naked, right? Right.
Woo! You can see everything. It's really cool to see these old blocks that are still here, but when they were pristine.
Right. And I think people might get a new appreciation, like, oh, this is what's really here. It's just hiding underneath all these ugly alterations,
Yeah, so maybe someone who sees that will be inspired to maybe try to reflect that back in their house if they own one of these historic houses.
Yeah. Well, on the other side too, like if a house does have aluminum siding, at least what's underneath it is being preserved. So I guess maybe at a future time, somebody can get rid of it and be like, oh wow, this is nice.
Yeah, like so the hardwood floors. Yeah.
It is being preserved to a certain extent. Yeah.
Sure, it's like sealed in plastic.
Right, exactly.
Literally sealed in plastic for future generations.
Right, exactly. Very good.
Are there any like we're gonna bring it back to our local area? So are there any like features you see in Northwest Philly houses that you're like, ooh, that's cool, they should hold on to that? Yeah.
So yeah, the architects of that era actually did put like a lot of things that seem kind of like superfluous, but they're actually pretty interesting if you stop and look at them closely. So your neighborhood in Northwest is really interesting because it's kind of so distinctive from the rest of the city, which is red brick, and your neighborhood has a lot of that Wissahickon stone. So yeah,
Our schist.
Your shit. You guys are the
Got to
shits.
hear and schist, man.
Right. I had enough of your shits.
Thank you. Nicely done.
Could be the header of this article.
Oh no.
Hey, go for it. Yeah.
Go for it.
So what's next for the book? Are there any, do they have you set up for any engagements or presentations coming down the pike?
I don't know just yet. I mean, because of the COVID, unfortunately, I don't know. I'd like to do maybe some meetings in the future, maybe when things get back to normal, whatever that means.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I'm. It's kind of up in the air right now as far as the speaking engagements, but yeah, maybe some virtual things.
Yeah. Are you still collecting pictures?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Do you have enough for book 5 yet?
It's possible.
Maybe. Do you think it's
Yeah,
going to
'cause-
return us to the same era, or are there other eras you think might be worth looking at?
It's funny, that era was so well covered that I think I could just. I don't know if there's going to be another desire for a similar style book, but
Who knows?
that period was just so well covered, which is
Neat.
great. I mean, it's nice that we had that visual record to go by.
Yeah. The whole book is full of pictures like that. Like
Mm-hmm.
shopkeepers, you can look in the window and see the little stacks of like coffee cans and shit. It's just amazing. I love these. This is my favorite. I loved all your books. They've always been fascinating. But this one to me had both. You had, because you talk about the architecture and you tell me why it's there, and then on the other hand, like you have a light touch with the captions. Like somehow I missed the murder. I don't know how I missed the murder, guys. Fascinated with that woman with the baby, and I totally missed that the guy had been murdered. That's amazing. So
Yeah, read the captions. Yeah,
there's more. There's, you can keep digging.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's really cool. It's a book you'll go through again and again and see something new every time you go through it. I think it's just,
and the people too. The people are the ethnic groups. Yeah.
they're part of it. Yeah, and that's also an interesting part. Maybe that's something your next book could do that would probably be interesting, but it'd probably be a real Herculean challenge. But to see if you can get people of color of that time, all the pictures, right?
That's right. Yeah, I don't think they got enough coverage back in those days, but yeah, it's an interesting story.
Yeah, right. I'm sure that'd be really interesting. The same kind of book, but with people of color that have been here for however long. But I mean, those
They're
pictures,
hard to find.
those are not easy pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've been scooped up. So do you have a favorite part of the city personally?
Well, I'm kind of partial to South Philly since I live here, but
Yeah. And you're in a historic house too, right?
well, it was built in 1909, so I don't know how historic that is, but it's
100
okay.
years?
Over 100 years, yeah.
I think that sounds historic to me.
Okay, yeah. I'll
And
buy
you're
that.
apparently in some sort of cave.
It's my basement. Yeah, I know. It's my basement / cave, yeah.
And you're Batman. Oh, Bacardi, never mind.
Yeah, there you go. It's the Bat Cave, yes.
Yes.
It is literally the Bat Cave.
So I think, I mean, is there anything else that you wanted to share? Any other parting thoughts about it?
Well, I would like to say this book does make a good gift if somebody who used to live in Philadelphia, or somebody who just moved to Philadelphia, maybe just get them caught up on the history of the city a little bit.
Right.
And the holidays are just around the corner, so
They are.
let's
And
have a copy or 10.
Yeah, and we're all shut in now, so
I know, right? Yeah.
You can give everybody the same gift, and they'll never know because we're not even getting together. So you don't have to have. They can keep. Everybody can get one.
That's it.
That's what I think.
That'll up the sales.
Yeah.
Everyone get a copy. For everyone.
Literally, because
Everyone.
like, imagine if you're going to someone's house, you couldn't bring them a stack of books. Everyone would be like, "That's lame." But if you just sent everybody their own book, and everybody just, it's suddenly not so lame, people.
There you go.
You can do it on Amazon. Blick, it's done.
There you go.
And Amazon is where they can go. So we'll have the link under the video.
As soon as it's hot off the presses.
Yes.
It's still right in time for the holidays.
No, it's still in time. Yeah, I mean.
Hey, what's your best-selling book so far?
I'm going to say my first book. I can't say 100% it is, but I think because it's been out the longest, and people in West Philly really have a strong attachment to their neighborhood. So
Yeah.
that was probably the biggest selling.
So,
Good.
okay. Well, thank you for making time for us. Again, this has been Local Live with Steve and Carolyn and local author Joe Minardi. Keep an eye out for his book, City of Neighborhoods, Philadelphia, 1890 to 1910.
Thanks.
Thanks again, Joe.
All
Bye-bye.
right, take care. Bye-bye.